You can buy a property today and watch it double or even triple in value over time. And you don't even need to put in any extra money or your own time or effort. You just need to buy in the right place. You need to buy in the path of progress. In this video, I'll tell you what that means and how to do it. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the BiggerPockets YouTube channel, where we help you achieve financial freedom through real estate. I'm Dave Meyer, BiggerPockets head of real estate investing, and I've been an investor myself for 15 years and have benefited enormously from the path of progress. So today I'll share what I've learned so you can go out and find the same types of home run deals that I have. So first off, when I say path of progress, what does that even mean? In a real estate context, it's just a fancy term for an area that has growing demand, that's becoming more desirable to live in because of predictable sort of structural type factors. Obviously, if an area becomes more desirable, more people want to live there, home prices go up, and that makes your property more valuable. But the main point about the path of progress is how it can really create huge upside in your deals. Because the thing is, the average US home, the average property will appreciate most years about the pace of inflation, like 2 or 3 or maybe 4%. And if you happen to be in a really hot real estate market, you could see prices go up 10 or 20% over the course of a couple of years. But if you can find a property that's in the path of progress, in the right specific area where everyone's going to want to live a few years from now, that's how you pour rocket fuel on your entire portfolio. In this scenario, it's possible to double or even triple your equity and take your investing career to a whole new level. That's what you get when you take advantage of the path of progress. And even if the term path of progress is new to you and it feels like something you need to understand, all sorts of complex data to predict, I can assure you, you've almost definitely seen the path of progress happen in your own life. If you live in a big city, you've probably seen a neighborhood that used to have less demand and suddenly it becomes trendy and expensive over a couple of years. Or if you're in the suburbs, maybe one of the towns nearby became more desirable because the schools improved or they built a new park. In rural areas, maybe you have a new factory or distribution center or a new Walmart that can make the surrounding area much more desirable, and that can make home prices increase. All of that are just examples of path of progress. So you've probably had that thought, maybe even before you were investing, thinking, oh man, I wish I had bought a property in so-and-so area before they opened the new hospital or before all those cool coffee shops popped up. I would have made so much money. The good news is you still can. There are probably examples of path of progress available right now. And I'm going to tell you 3 great ways for you to find them. And then I'll talk about how to design a great deal once you've identified the path of progress near you. All right, option number 1 to identifying the path of progress, listen to the government. I know not everyone wants to hear that, but typically anytime an area improves enough to affect home prices, the local government is going to be involved in some way. And this could be very directly, like through infrastructure spending. Maybe they're planning a huge project like a new highway, extending a train line, opening a new park, which will immediately make an area more desirable. It also could come from more consistent small improvements, like a plan to increase funding for schools in a particular area, or repaving sidewalks even over several years can make a difference. Or it can be somewhat more regulatory, because any large-scale development like a new hospital or a factory getting built is going to require at least some level of government permits and approvals. Sometimes government will offer incentives for development in a certain area, or they can change zoning regulations, which will greatly impact property values. Whatever it is, the basic idea holds true that the government does something that increases demand to that area, and with that increased demand and desirability, that drives up home prices. Just to give you an example of this, about 10 years ago when I was still living in Denver, I found out that the local government was going to put in a new train line that would connect downtown Denver to the airport, which was a huge deal. And near one of the stops that was going to be on this train line, there was going to be a new park put into place that was going to be super cool. I knew about that. So did everyone. It was public information, but I decided to act on that and buy a house in that neighborhood. And the equity in that house has at least doubled and has probably tripled at that point. But that's just one example of how you can use publicly available information to identify the path of progress. If you can find areas where the government is focusing their time and money, that's going to be a strong indicator about the path of progress. And 2 things you can generally count on with any government entity is that there's going to be documentation of what they're doing, and there will probably be a lot of lead time. That's one of the advantages of the government working somewhat slowly, is you can get out in front of these things. So start with your local news or even local Facebook groups. That could be a great source of information about big government projects, or you can go directly to the source. Almost every city, county government will have things like their 5 or 10-year budgets, visions for some future version of the city, or capital improvement plans that get posted online. There also might be a zoning board or transportation committee or other bodies that are allocating funds or approving permits. So start looking at transcripts of their meetings. And you don't really need to understand all the minutia of every discussion, but if you get a sense of the areas they're focused on improving in the near future, that could be a really strong indication of the path of progress. Now, of course, before we move on, it's important to remember that nothing is guaranteed, especially when it comes to government, and any new developments can be derailed, they can be canceled, often they are delayed. So you need to make sure that you are picking projects that have a high probability and that you have a backup plan if government spending doesn't come through. So that's our first indicator for the path of progress following the government. Number 2, best way to find the path of progress is to listen to corporations. Just think about this for a minute. There are big companies like Amazon, Walmart, Starbucks that have entire teams of people researching the best locations to expand with new stores, new facilities, and they're crunching all these numbers and modeling all the data years into the future to try and get ahead of the curve. So you could, of course, try and do the same thing yourself with less information and resources, or you could assume that they're mostly correct, look into which companies are expanding in your area, and then begin exploring those areas for potential investment opportunities. Of course, that's only one piece of the puzzle. You can't rely on them entirely because these companies have their own business goals, and the context of why they're expanding is really important. For example, if you see that a mid-priced restaurant chain like Applebee's is going to open a new location in an area that already has a Chili's and a Fridays nearby for a long time, that probably doesn't indicate some change in the path of progress. But if all of a sudden you look at your local news and you see that an Applebee's and a new Fridays and a new Chili's are all planning to open in an area that previously didn't have a lot of food options, or maybe it was just fast food options, that could mean that all these big corporations believe customers in that area will soon have more disposable income. And that is a really good indication that you found the path of progress, where home prices are going to appreciate, or at least they will be a strong contender for you to investigate. The flip side of this equation can work too. There are some companies that are big enough economic drivers that they create their own path of progress. We've seen this with some of the factories that have opened over the last few years to manufacture semiconductors in places like upstate New York or Columbus, Ohio, as part of the CHIPS Act. And in a rural area, a big factory opening and creating a few thousand new jobs can bring a path of progress all on its own. Same thing can be true some places when a Walmart opens or an Amazon distribution center. It can both enhance the quality of life for people who live nearby and then also create new jobs that drive further growth in the area. So whatever market you're operating in, keep an eye on how big corporations are viewing the area. If they're opening stores or factories or offices, that will typically be announced long before it actually happens, which can give you time to do your due diligence and potentially buy a property before that appreciation actually occurs. So that's the second one. We've now talked about following the government and following the corporations to identify the path of progress and where property values are likely to appreciate. The third way to identify the path of progress in your market is to follow the young people. And this can mean a few different things, but young people typically have lower income and less savings, so they look to move into more affordable areas. And this can apply to people just starting their careers, fresh out of college, or it can mean younger families who are moving out of cities and into the suburbs for the first time. In either scenario, these people will typically have a few different towns or neighborhoods to choose from, and most of them will start to gravitate towards one. In a city, it might be the neighborhood that has an art scene or cool stores and restaurants. It's cliche to say that the hipsters will lead you to investing profits, but it actually can sometimes be true. In the suburbs, the more desirable areas might have slightly better schools, or it might be more walkable or better located for commuting to jobs. These areas that are affordable enough for young people to live in now, but also already desirable enough to see some demand, are often in the path of progress. People might want to stay in those areas as their incomes increase, which means the home prices will appreciate around them. And identifying these neighborhoods is actually usually pretty easy for your local home market. You'll naturally know if you're living there where your friends are moving or their kids are moving and which areas are just becoming generally more popular. But if you're looking to invest in a long distance market, the best way to figure out where people want to live, and they'll probably want to live in a few years from now, there's really no substitute for going there, doing a vibe check, and figuring it out for yourself. So you should talk to your agent or your property manager, ideally both, to get some suggestions, and then go visit a couple of different places. Get the vibe of which up and coming areas you think you might want to invest in and which you don't. I should mention that areas which have young people moving in and lots of rapid development can experience gentrification. And as an investor, you should always be thinking about how the actions of your investing affects the communities around you. Make sure you're comfortable with the ethics of the deals in addition to the financials. All right, so those are the 3 ways I recommend identifying where the path of progress is in your market: following the government, following the corporations, and following the young people. Before we get out of here, I do want to talk about what you should do after you've identified the path of progress. How do you take advantage? There are things I want to note here. The first thing is that if you're confident in the path of progress, be willing to take a deal that is around break even today. Because if you're seeing major positive changes coming around this property, you can expect both appreciation to go up and for rents to go up significantly within a few years. Now, I've said this a lot, like I don't buy deals that aren't cash flowing, but if I see huge upside in the future of the deal, I am willing to take something that is relatively close to break even on cash flow right now, assuming I'm still getting appreciation, amortization, tax benefits, all the other benefits of real estate investing. So in this type of case where you've identified a path of progress, that upside should make you willing to take a lower return today that you would in an area that's only going to appreciate sort of at the average rate. All you have to do is just buy a solid asset that won't cost you money to hold every month. Trust that your predictions about the path of progress are correct and reap the greater benefits down the road. The second thing to consider is making sure that the property you're buying aligns with the type of progress you're expecting to occur. Think about who your eventual tenants are, who your eventual buyers are going to be. If the progress is coming from a new Amazon office that's creating white-collar jobs, you may need a higher-end property to attract those tenants. If you're buying in an improving school district, look for a property with more bedrooms to attract a family. If a hospital is bringing new jobs to a market, maybe you should consider a midterm rental strategy for travel nurses. This may sound stupid, but it can have a huge impact on your investment, making sure that you are matching the type of property that you're buying and the eventual customer that you are going to be offering that property to. All right, so that's what I have for you today. And just as a quick recap, path of progress is buying in an area that is likely to appreciate faster than the national average or faster than the area immediately around it. I offered you guys 3 ideas on how to find the path of progress. It's following the government and their spending, following corporations, and following young people. And remember, once you go and identify the path of progress, try to find a really solid asset. And even if that means the returns aren't going to be amazing right now, as long as you're able to break even and hold on to that property for the long term, you can experience the upside of the path of progress over the long run. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions about this, put them in the comments below. If not, I'll see you next time.